Fairy tales, a window into our deepest fears and desires? Well, not quite. Today we're discussing how a dark twist on classic stories may actually be reshaping our understanding of power, identity, and societal expectations.
Oh, that's an intriguing perspective. What sparked this conversation?
We're diving into a fascinating project called Shadows of the Heart by Tomas Fojtik. It's a dark, allegorical fairy tale that turns the traditional evil queen narrative on its head. The story follows Morgana, a young woman born with magical abilities in the kingdom of Elysia. But here's the kicker: her powers, instead of being celebrated, become a source of fear and conflict.
That's quite a departure from the typical fairy tale setup. How does Morgana's journey unfold?
Well, it's a roller coaster, to say the least. Morgana starts off embracing her magical abilities with joy, but she's quickly stifled by societal expectations, particularly from her mother, Queen Ravenna. There's this poignant tension between Ravenna's ambition for her daughter and her fear of the church's influence. It really highlights the complexities of mother-daughter relationships and how societal pressures can strain even the closest bonds.
That sounds like it could resonate with a lot of people. Does Morgana find any allies in her struggle?
She does, actually. There's a character named Alistair, a huntsman who becomes Morgana's forbidden love interest. Their relationship adds another layer to the story, showing how personal desires can clash with societal constraints. And here's where it gets really interesting. There's also a character named Seraphina, described as a wise outcast. She introduces concepts of psychedelics and alternative healing, offering Morgana a different perspective on her powers.
Wow, psychedelics in a fairy tale? That's unexpected. How does that tie into the larger themes of the story?
Right? It's a bold move by Fojtik. The psychedelic element ties into the story's exploration of consciousness and identity. It's part of a larger theme of challenging societal norms and finding alternative paths to self-discovery. But here's the thing: as Morgana delves deeper into her powers and the conflicts around her intensify, even her relationships with Alistair and Seraphina become strained.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. It sounds like Morgana faces some serious challenges. Does she have any major turning points in her journey?
Absolutely. There's a pivotal moment that really shakes the foundation of Morgana's world. During an argument with her mother, Morgana accidentally unleashes her magic, resulting in Ravenna's death. It's a tragic event that transforms Morgana's path, pushing her towards becoming what the story refers to as the evil queen.
That's intense. How does the story handle Morgana's transformation? It seems like it could easily fall into stereotypical villain territory.
That's a great point, and it's actually where Fojtik's storytelling really shines. Instead of simply labeling Morgana as evil, the narrative invites us to understand the complexities of her character and the circumstances that led her to this point. It's a nuanced exploration of how societal pressures, personal trauma, and the fear of one's own power can shape a person's choices.
That's such a refreshing take on the evil queen trope. Are there any other ways the story subverts traditional fairy tale elements?
Oh, you bet. One of the most striking examples involves Morgana's sister, Snow White. In a dark twist on the classic tale, Snow White is forced to wear hot iron shoes at her wedding as punishment for Morgana's choices. It's a grotesque reminder of the consequences of Morgana's actions and the complexities of familial relationships.
Yikes, that's a vivid image. It seems like Fojtik isn't pulling any punches with the darker elements of the story.
The story also explores how women are often stigmatized or feared for embracing their strength, which is symbolized by Morgana's magical abilities. There's also a fascinating subplot involving Morgana's father, King Frederick, whose anti-feminist views cast a long shadow over her upbringing.
That adds another layer of complexity to Morgana's story. How does her relationship with her father impact her journey?
It's a significant factor in shaping Morgana's worldview. King Frederick's beliefs that a woman's worth is tied to her obedience and silence breed resentment in Morgana's heart. It's actually what drives her to fight for her place in a world intent on silencing her. The story suggests that if Frederick had embraced Morgana's strength instead of trying to suppress it, her path might have been very different.
That's such a powerful exploration of how parental relationships can shape us.
First, there's Malachar, a dark priest who's manipulating the fears of the kingdom for his own gain. He's a constant presence, sowing discord and casting doubt on Morgana's intentions. Then there's the growing influence of the church, which sees Morgana's magic as a threat. These external pressures really force Morgana to confront her own identity and power.
It sounds like Morgana is caught between a rock and a hard place. How does she navigate all of this?
That's really the crux of her journey. There's a powerful scene where Morgana attempts to demonstrate her healing powers to the council, trying to prove that she's not a threat. But Malachar manipulates the situation, reigniting fears within the kingdom. It's a moment that really encapsulates Morgana's struggle for acceptance.
That must be incredibly frustrating for her. It seems like no matter what she does, she can't escape the shadow of her mark.
Exactly. And that frustration leads her to some pretty dark places. As she continues to train and grow more confident in her abilities, the darkness within her becomes harder to ignore. There's a point where she even contemplates taking action against Snow White, driven by a fear of losing control and the kingdom.
Wow, that's intense. It really shows how complex and flawed Morgana is. As a character, she's not just a simple hero or villain, but someone struggling with very real, very human emotions and fears.
Absolutely, and I think that's what makes this story so compelling. It's not just about good versus evil, but about the shades of gray that exist in all of us. Morgana's journey is one of self-discovery, of learning to accept both her light and her darkness. It's a journey that's mirrored in her relationship with Alistair, a character who becomes both a source of support and a complication in her quest for identity.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Can you tell us more about Alistair and his role in the story?
Certainly. Alistair is a childhood friend of Morgana's who finds himself caught in the middle of the conflict between Morgana and Snow White. His relationship with Morgana becomes a focal point of the story as she learns to balance her personal desires with her responsibilities as a potential queen. It's through her interactions with Alistair that we see some of Morgana's most vulnerable moments, as well as her struggle to trust and open herself up to others.
It sounds like a really complex and nuanced relationship. How does it affect Morgana's journey?
Well, Alistair's presence in Morgana's life serves as a reminder of her humanity and her capacity for love, even as she grapples with the darker aspects of her nature. Their relationship becomes a sort of anchor for Morgana, grounding her even as she delves deeper into her magical abilities. But it also complicates things, as Alistair's friendship with Snow White creates additional tension and forces Morgana to confront her jealousy and insecurities.
That adds another layer of complexity to the story. It's not just about Morgana's struggle for power and acceptance, but also about her personal relationships and emotional growth.
Exactly. And it's through these relationships with Alistair, with Snow White, with her mentor Seraphina, that we see Morgana's true character emerge. She's not just a powerful sorceress or a potential queen, but a young woman trying to find her place in the world and come to terms with all aspects of herself.
It sounds like a really powerful message. How does Morgana's story ultimately resolve?
Well, it all comes to a head in a fierce battle for Alicia. Morgana finds herself fighting not just for her life, but for her identity and the future of her kingdom. And it's in this moment of crisis that she has a profound realization about the power of unity and love. She comes to understand that true strength comes from embracing all facets of herself, both the light and the dark. And more importantly, she realizes the power of reconciliation.
That sounds like a pivotal moment. What happens next?
In a beautiful and unexpected turn of events, Morgana and Snow White come together, putting aside their differences to confront Malachar as a united front. It's a powerful moment that showcases the strength that can be found in sisterhood and understanding. This reconciliation marks a turning point, not just in their relationship, but in Morgana's journey of self-acceptance.
That's a powerful resolution. It's not about one sister triumphing over the other, but about finding strength in their bond and their shared experiences.
Exactly. And I think that's really the core message of the book. It's about the strength that comes from vulnerability, from acknowledging our struggles and embracing our whole selves. Morgana's journey is ultimately about redefining herself, not as a villain or a hero, but as a complex, multifaceted individual.
It's a message that really resonates, especially in today's world where we're constantly grappling with issues of identity and acceptance. Do you think that's why this book has struck such a chord with readers?
I think you're onto something there. Shadow of the Heart may be set in a fantasy world, but its themes are incredibly relevant to our modern lives. We all struggle with societal expectations, with feeling like we don't fit in, with the fear that parts of ourselves are unacceptable or dangerous. Morgana's journey shows us that it's possible to confront those fears and come out stronger on the other side.
And sometimes embracing those parts of ourselves we've been taught to fear can be the key to unlocking our true potential. It's a powerful message, and one that I think will stay with readers long after they finish the book.
Absolutely. Fojtik has really created something special here. Shadow of the Heart is more than just a dark fairy tale. It's a nuanced exploration of identity, power, and the human experience. It challenges us to look beyond the surface, to question our assumptions, and to find strength in our complexities.
That does sound effective. It seems like Fojtik is really thinking about how to make the most impact with his storytelling. What about the themes of feminism you mentioned earlier? How are those explored?
The feminist themes are woven throughout the story in some really interesting ways. Morgana's struggle for autonomy and power in a patriarchal society is central to the narrative. The story also explores how women are often stigmatized or feared for embracing their strength, which is symbolized by Morgana's magical abilities. There's also a fascinating subplot involving Morgana's father, King Frederick, whose anti-feminist views cast a long shadow over her upbringing.
That adds another layer of complexity to Morgana's story. How does her relationship with her father impact her journey?
It's a significant factor in shaping Morgana's worldview. King Frederick's beliefs that a woman's worth is tied to her obedience and silence breed resentment in Morgana's heart. It's actually what drives her to fight for her place in a world intent on silencing her. The story suggests that if Frederick had embraced Morgana's strength instead of trying to suppress it, her path might have been very different.
That's such a powerful exploration of how parental relationships can shape us. It sounds like this story is tackling some really heavy themes. How does Fojtik plan to make sure it resonates with audiences?
Well, Fojtik has some interesting plans for audience engagement. He's organizing local community screenings in Bristol with Quanda sessions, which could lead to some fascinating discussions about the themes in the film. He's also planning to submit the film to festivals like the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival to reach a broader audience. The goal is to spark conversations about identity, feminism, and societal norms.
That's a great approach to maximizing the film's impact. Before we wrap up, is there anything else about this project that you found particularly compelling?
You know what really struck me is how the project aims to reclaim and redefine the evil queen narrative. By diving deep into Morgana's psyche and exploring the factors that shape her choices, it challenges us to think more critically about how we label and judge others. It's a powerful reminder that there's often more complexity to people's stories than we initially assume.
Well, I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for this film when it's released. It's been fascinating discussing all these elements of the project. Thanks for sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure. Projects like this that use storytelling to explore complex social issues are so valuable. They can really open up new perspectives and start important conversations. And who knows, maybe we'll find ourselves at one of those community screenings in Bristol someday, ready to dive into a post-film discussion.
That would be amazing. Until then, I guess we'll just have to wait and see how Morgana's journey unfolds on screen. It's been great exploring Shadows of the Heart with you today.
Likewise, it's always energizing to discuss projects that push creative boundaries and challenge us to think differently. As we wrap up, I think the key takeaway is that Shadows of the Heart is more than just a dark fairy tale. It's a mirror reflecting our own societal struggles and personal conflicts. It reminds us that the line between hero and villain is often blurrier than we'd like to admit.
Absolutely. And it seems like it's going to challenge viewers to question their own biases and preconceptions. I'm looking forward to seeing how audiences respond to this fresh take on classic themes.